you're in it's a blind auction, right, in a sense, and you don't know when the next person's going to, raise their hand and call a name. And so you really just got to be strategic about, how you position yourself. At the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, am I going to regret not doing this trade? If that player gets picked a spot, whatever this spot is, and I was willing to give up this, can I sleep at night?
Well, we all hope that we get the best sleep ever after the 2024 NFL Draft. I'm Tatum Everett inside TCO Studios here for an NFL Draft preview show alongside voice of the Vikings, Paul Allen, and Vikings Entertainment Network's Gabe Henderson. And gentlemen, we just heard from Vikings GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah for the final time before the draft hits on April 25th. Paul, what were your takeaways from your conversations with Kwesi today?
First of all, shout out to Jesse on the jib for that slow roll over to...
We're professionals over here.
Whoa, that was nice. Secondly, my takeaways are just how dialed in. Take away how dialed in Kwesi is. Okay, that's going to be expected of a general manager running something that is so big 2 weeks in front of it, but the way he deferred a lot of the work and a lot of the praise to staff members and scouts and stuff, I thought that was beautiful, and to a man, he's ready.
He is very ready. I remember talking to some people in our front office, basically asking them, how many scenarios have you taken this offseason, given the fact that you may have to trade up or you may have to trade back? And one guy told me, this is the most scenarios I've ever had to think of in the front office role. And he's been in the front office for multiple years, so I'm excited to see what 2024 shakes out to be.
One of my favorite quotes from his press conference was, just because it's risky doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So he's willing to take a gamble. And will they take a gamble in the first round of this year's draft? Let's take a look at the Vikings draft order for the 2024 year. We know it can change, so this is just currently what it looks like for now. We have those 2 picks in the first round, and then the Vikings wouldn't pick again until Saturday with 2 4th-rounders, 2 5th-rounders, a 6th, and then 2 7th-rounders. So with all that draft capital and the multitude of picks there in the end of the draft, we obviously can go in so many different directions. However, I want to start with the best case scenario for the Vikings in round 1. So, PA, I'll send it to you first.
Well, my best case scenario, with absolutely no inside intel, just riding discernment, is to trade up from the 11th spot and find a quarterback that you love, but do so without giving up next year's first-round pick. So that is best case scenario for me. I don't know if it's going to be done, but you asked.
I did. And I'll ask you, Gabe.
Yeah, and the answer that I would have is keep that 11th overall selection, maybe get the quarterback that you want, and then with that 23rd overall selection, trade that back to get a second-rounder and or another day 2 pick. I just look at what Kevin O'Connell did in 2019 when he was with the Washington Commanders, and that year at 15th overall, God rest his soul, the Commanders selected Dwayne Haskins 15 overall. Then they traded back up into the first round to draft Montez Sweat. So there has been proof in the pudding. It's just the fact that the Vikings are going to take that this year.
I love that you took that direction, because I'm going to go absolutely opposite at this point in time. For me, best case scenario is actually no movement at all. I think in a perfect world, wouldn't it be great, and who knows if it's even possible, if the quarterback, the ideal quarterback for this organization, just falls to you at 11, then you get to pick a top defensive pick at 23, who will obviously still be available with the amount of offensive talent that's in this draft. So that's kind of my best case scenario. I don't know. I'm not like a prognosticator.
No,
or anything,
I love that.
But,
well, I love that because, if it falls the way you say or the way you prefer, well, then you get something for the future that's undoubtedly important, the quarterback, but you're also able to fortify the village with a defensive player or whatever you get from there. So, yeah, I'm cool with that.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of people saying that the first 10 selections in this year's draft will be offensive guys. Yeah. So if you have the best defensive guys at the 23rd overall selection, that is kind of best case scenario.
If the Vikings were not able to get a quarterback with one of the first selections that they have in their possession, what position do you think that they should go? Well, who do you think? I'm sorry. Let me ask you. Who do you think they should draft more specifically?
I'm not giant mock draft guy because I don't look at them that much. It's not because of people looking for web hits trying to splash and stuff. It's simply, it diverts my attention from what I know about this team and what I don't pretend to know about college football players because I don't watch a lot of it. So therefore, I'll hone in on just a few this time of the year. The two that I would have in mind with no idea where they're going to be drafted, Illinois defensive tackle Jerzon Newton and Duke offensive lineman Graham Barton.
Okay.
Now with Newton, you know, I couldn't pick him out of a two-person lineup standing next to Harrison Smith about 7 months ago. Then Illinois played the Gophers, and I'm watching the game, and this Jerzon Newton wasn't playing in the first half, and they kept talking about him, and it's like, you know, he's suspended for whatever. It wasn't bad. Then he came in the second half, and I'm like, holy cow, how did Aaron Donald don an Illinois jersey? The guy was unbelievable as a three technique. So then I'm at the combine with you guys. He's not there. I was sad, but I still learned about him. And the offensive lineman, Graham Barton, wow. You talk about versatile and multifaceted and playing a bunch of different positions at a super high level. Those would be the two.
The first guy that comes to mind is Terrion Arnold, a cornerback from the University of Alabama. He is a guy that when I turn on the film, I see Xavier Howard, and that's a guy that Brian Flores drafted in 2019. A bump and run corner, a guy that can play the run very well, just a full, complete cornerback that can pretty much guard your best receiver. And when I think about, you know, cornerbacks, they have to have a vibe about them or an aura about their presence. And just having some physical communication or physical interaction as far as talking to Terrion Arnold in the past, there is an aura about who he is as a person. And then the second guy that I would talk about is Byron Murphy II.
Yeah.
Why have one Byron Murphy when you can have two? Yeah. This is a guy
That'd be really fun to call.
Phenomenal when it comes to stopping the run from a defensive lineman standpoint. I know you have the Tavondre Sweat, who was at University of Texas last year, who won the Outland Trophy, but when it comes to an NFL league, you have to win your one-on-one battles. And when it came to one-on-one battles last year, Byron Murphy II won every single one of them, which highlighted as the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year last year.
And if Tatum's best case scenario comes to fruition, I mean, that absolutely, I would imagine, could be a pick 11 scenario and maybe build from there, move around
from there,
and stuff.
yeah. Could be even the switching down, maybe the quarterback falls to 23. Who
Yep.
knows? This is why we have this talking season, because we never truly know. Well, you guys, if it's not a QB, I think the Vikings should draft Latu out of UCLA, not just because I want to challenge Paul Allen every single week and his calling abilities, but because I do think he's one of the most pure pass rushers in this draft. He led the league in tackles for a loss last season in the FBS, and he has the best pass rush win percentage. And he splits his time between standing up and having his hand in the ground, which we all know is something that Brian Flores could just have a field day with. The upside on this guy, I think, is massive, could be a great weapon for him. And another thing I really like about him is his rugby background.
Wow.
If you read more about this guy, we don't have time on the show to really do that, but if you read more about this guy, he's got an interesting journey, and I think the aggressiveness, the toughness that Brian Flores preaches and loves to see in a guy is something that you could find in Latu with his rugby background. He could have gone pro in rugby. Crazy.
That's pretty cool.
Yes. Well, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Vikings do not have a pick on Friday as of right now. So that would be the second and third rounds. So you've got picks in the fourth and the seventh round. So Gabe, I'm gonna start with you this time. If you want to find a position of depth, something that you can find in the later rounds, where would you go?
Well, you can never have enough offensive linemen. So if you want to go late quality depth on the offensive side of the ball, you got to start there. And then, you know, being a former college receiver, you can never have enough receivers, especially in the slot. There are, I believe this year's group is very deep when it comes to the wide receiver position. You're not going to have some of the top guys in the middle rounds, but when it comes to this team needing a wide receiver 3, I believe some of those later rounds, 4th, 5th, 6th, you can find a quality guy that can fit your roster.
And for me, it's a great question. It's a difficult question. Simply because the non-obvious doesn't, you know, like when Kwesi said during his press conference with the clip with which we led about risk. Okay, so say you get a quarterback high in the first, somewhere in the first, wherever you get a quarterback, I take another one. And I also focus on wide receiver, and here's why. First with the quarterback is, you know, I second guessed into 2020 in the combine when people were saying this is the deepest wide receiver draft in the history of the NFL. The Vikings got JJ and KJ Osborne. You know, I'm like, I need to see 20 of them before I can say best of anything. Yeah. Well, no, I need to see about 8 because from Jefferson through Darnell Mooney and Gabe Davis, they were right. And we've heard a lot of the same thing about quarterbacks. really for over a year about this draft. If that's the case, then I want two. I want somebody who might play now and somebody I can pilfer from another team and or B, put with Kevin O'Connell and this elite offensive staff and raise him. So that's one of them. Secondly, wide receiver. It's unbelievable the receivers that teams are getting deep in drafts that fit specifically what those teams do. Dontavian Wicks for Green Bay was not super deep in the draft, but just think like that, where this guy, plug him into this system and watch him flourish. It's happening all over the league. So quarterback and wide receiver.
5 quarterbacks on this current roster is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that would be right after the draft.
Right.
So we're going to have rookie camp, mini camp, training camp.
Lots of camps.
Cuts.
Right.
Cuts. And then you end up on some, and you also got the practice squad for Liberty wide receivers.
Man, that would be a good paycheck. That would be a really good paycheck.
There you go. Yeah. You'll make that type of money in broadcasting.
I just learned Gabe was a wide receiver at Liberty. First time I've heard that.
If you're now learning this, that's probably best case scenario. We should have started off with
Best case, I know. Well, I can't really expand upon what you guys just said. I agree about the wide receiver thing, especially with KJ Osborne not on the team any longer. So I'm going to get to my favorite part of the show, which is the bold predictions. We don't call them hot takes here. We call them bold predictions. Gabe, let's start with you with that one.
Woo!
And this could be, technically about a little bit of everything.
Woo!
Right?
Everything. So look, this is what I'm going to say. This is my bold prediction. The Vikings will find their future at quarterback in this year's draft. I know there are reports out there saying, well, the Vikings already have 3 quarterbacks on the roster and they can think about 2025 when it comes to free agency or the draft. Well, when you listen to Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell's presser, they have all said the same thing. This is one of the deepest quarterback classes they have seen. And if that's the case, I believe the future is now for this Minnesota Vikings team when it comes to selecting their signal caller of the future.
Is it my turn?
It is your turn. Bold prediction.
Yeah,
PA.
but this bold prediction seems to be the cross your fingers and hope you leave this with your job part of the equation. Especially when I eyeball the camera and I say, Justin Jefferson will sign a contract before the season. That's my bold prediction.
Okay.
Why so?
Well, because I didn't say what team and what season. Why so? Well, he's pretty good, and I do believe the team wants him. And if the reports are accurate that there was a rejected contract proposal at one point, I would happen to believe that the sides happen to be really, really close. We have learned the salary cap goes up yearly, so if somebody wanted to look at the salary cap and be like, whoa, that was a big jump. I want to see what the next jump is. Yeah. All makes sense to me. Reports that Jefferson might have some trouble with who the next quarterback's going to be. That's not true. And yes, I did get that from the inside. So Justin Jefferson signing a contract before the season with the Vikings could be a long shot, but that's my bold prediction.
No, we want you to make bold predictions around
of course
here.
You do.
I'm also going to play along in this one. My bold prediction is that the Vikings will find the next Ivan Pace Jr., undrafted free agent that will start for the team this coming season. I do think this is a very friendly defense that is open to guys like Ivan, rookies that can come in and play immediately. That's where I'm trending more towards a defensive guy being able to be found in the undrafted free agency period right after that draft. But I do think that the staff is talented at picking out some diamonds in the rough, and I think that they will land on another, I don't want to say next Ivan Pace Jr. because we're not replacing him. He's awesome. We love him. I just think they can add it to their list of talent.
And I know this is a draft preview show, but just an aside for a second on Ivan Pace Jr.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm so excited to see what is next for that young man because I'll never forget the Seattle preseason game last year. I don't know who the guard was, but he was looking at him like, you're undrafted. Well, and he just got trucked, and we saw that the whole year.
We did.
To see what's next for him, that's exciting.
Very, very exciting. Well, we are very excited about the 2024 NFL Draft quickly approaching. Thank you so much to Voice of the Vikings, Paul Allen, and Gabe Henderson for joining us here on the set today for our draft preview show. Be sure to stick with Vikings.com or the Vikings app, all of our social channels, as well as KFAN and KFAN.com for all of your Vikings draft coverage as we head into April 25th.